සෝමනාසෙන් අවසරයි මිත්‍රවරුනි එක්සත් රාජධානී ශ්‍රී ලාංකීය බුද්ධිඥයන්ගේ සංවිධානය තමයි Association of Professional Sri Lankans කියලා අපි කියන්නේ තුෂාර කිව්වා වගේ අපිට අපේ ශ්‍රී ලාංකීය සංවිධාන වලින් වඩාත්ම සමාජිකත්වයක් තියෙන එකම සමාජික සංවිධානය තමයි මේ බුද්ධිඥයන්ගේ සංවිධානය මම නීතිඥයෙක් තුෂාර ගණකාධිකාර කෙනෙක් නැත්නම් accountant කෙනෙක් Shirani is how do you a speech language specialist I don't know how you say that in English මොකද කතන භාෂා චිකිත්සක ඉතින් ඒ වගේම අපේ සංවිධානයේ ඉන්නවා නොඑක් තාරාතිරම් වල බුද්ධිඥ ඒ වගේම ලංකාවේ බුද්ධිඥයෝ කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෛද්‍යවරයෙක් වෙන්න ඕනේ ඉංජිනේරු කෙනෙක් වෙන්න ඕනේ එහෙම නැත්නම් නීතිඥයෙක් හරි ඒ වගේ කෙනෙක් conventional sense එකෙන් ඒක නෙමෙයි අපි කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපි හුඟක් මේ රටේ අපි හිතමු උදාහරණයක් හැටියට වෛද්‍යවරු නම් ඒ වෛද්‍ය සංගමයක් තියෙනවා නීතිඥවරු නම් නීතිඥ සංගමයක් තියෙනවා අපි ඒක නවත් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ සමාජිකත් අපිට තිබුණාට හරහට we go across all the professions to become one association ඉතින් එක්සත් රාජධානියේ අපේ සමාජිකත්වය 485ක් වගේ විශාල ගණනයක් නම්බර් කියන්නේ සමාජිකත්වයක් තියෙනවා අපි බැලුවේ generations දෙකක් නැත්නම් පරම්පරා දෙකක් තියෙනවා මෙතන තුෂාර කිව්වා වගේ ලංකාවෙන් ආපු කට්ටියයි මේ රටේ හැදෙන කට්ටියයි ඒක හරි වැරද්දක් හොයන්න නෙමෙයි අපි බලන්න මොකද්ද වෙනස් තියෙන්නේ කොහොමද ඒකට වැඩ කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ මොකද ඉදිරියේ අනාගතයේ මේ කට්ටිය තමයි ලංකාවේ නමුත් එක්සත් රාජධානියේ ආසියාතික පුරවැසියන් හැටියට ඉන්නේ මම ලේසියට ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් මේ ඉතුරු හරිය කරන්න මොකද ළමයි තේරෙන්නේ නැති වෙයි මොනවද කියන්නේ කියලා සමහර වෙලාවට ඉතින් Sanjay, can you put the other one please I think what I'm going to show you now is a short presentation about yeah, next one please. Now living in the UK, we developed a series where we go from one place of Sri Lankan community to another, talking of what I call Sri Lankan or within quotes Eastern cultural values. Now, someone who wants to take the challenge and argue, saying values are values, there are no Eastern values, there are no Western values, right? That's possible. But if you stay at that point, we will never understand why do you come to a temple as opposed to go into a, let me say something very strong, this is an open conversation, as opposed to going to a, say, a nightclub, for example. So there are reasons. So let's be grown up enough to look at and understand what are cultural values we have brought from Sri Lanka, which I call Eastern values, and again what the values in the West are. Now, this is a very materialistic way of looking at life, which is very unreligious, but let's look at it. What does living in the UK mean to you? Let's ask ourselves this question as well. Those who have come from Sri Lanka will say we come for our children, education, come for our jobs or profession. Some have come to live a comfortable, a better life than what you had in Sri Lanka. Some will say create wealth, there's nothing wrong in it, pass it on to children. As a result of all of this, have friends. So, please feel free to either say, I think you missed another point, or there were 3 other points that you have missed, etc. Or you disagree with it. That's fine. It's a discussion. So I believe this is not an inclusive list, but amongst other things, some have come here for a comfortable, better life. You might have had a good life in Sri Lanka. You come for a better life here. On the other hand, you might have come as a student or as as a job or professional, etc. So, Sunday. Quite simply, living a better materialistic life than in Sri Lanka. With hindsight, if you go to Sri Lanka relatively often, you will see, I'm not so sure that Sri Lanka is that bad anymore. It's a nice place to live. So that gap has narrowed down. I'm going for the material answers here. We have an HD 3D or HD TV television, which is what we're looking at. iPods, cars. If you have a car, an even better car, nice friends, designer clothes, sunglasses, watches, you name it. Now, you don't have to agree with me, but I'm saying some of the materialistic aspirations of our people, including all of us or some of us. I'm asking, is this all a bad thing? Possibly somebody might say, yes, it is. Someone might say no. Ranjan, of course, who's not here, we would have one speaker less today. He would take up my friend Ranjan. Ranjan would actually talk about total Western values and just provoke the audience to have a good discussion with him. Is that all a bad thing? No. Yes or no? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But tell me I can tell you one thing, and I'm sure you'll agree. Once you get used to all these materialistic comforts, it's a bit like alcohol, or my problem is cup of tea. You get used to it, addicted to it. The problem is, that's not bad either. But do you know where and when to stop? Now, what happens when things go wrong? In Western systems, the systems that we live in, there's nothing wrong again. You will have systems to treat you. We, Western people, would go for counseling, go to medical doctors, mediation by lawyers, and I know that very well, litigation through courts, and in worst case scenarios, the prison system will take care of it, if you go to the extremes of Western materialism. Eastern society, or Sri Lankan society, whatever you want to call it, we believe, I think prevention is better than cure, and sets out guidelines to follow. One of the things we have very strongly in Sri Lanka, to a certain extent it is, people don't have time, and I have been to Jaffna. There, most of the old people on their families have disintegrated, the northern province, because of the conflict there. But we still have the luxury of elders. The children you all can look up to your parents. We can, the younger people could, or the people with grandparents, etc. We look up to our elders. We look up to our clergy. So we have a system which, there is no book which says you shall have this, that and the other. The Western system is all codified. There are things that you can go and talk to people, if you can talk to, get advice, etc. Or if you don't get advice, then the system will take care of you in a punitive way. So all of a sudden, when things go wrong, you could see, one is, well, we have a very black and white system, an organized system. In the Eastern society, we have an organized system, but it's not codified, or there are no specific parameters. I would say, and of course you may disagree, Eastern values are common sense, basic principles, not trying to promote a religion, right thought and action. That's what it is. But that's what Buddhism says. I'm sure others will say that that is in their religions as well, upon which society has been built. Remember that all the religions and philosophies started in the West. In the East, I'm sorry. In the West, people think some of the religions have been nurtured in the West, and that's why there is a sense of conflict now. So it's very important, right thought and right action. Now, it's very easy also for somebody like me, or if it's a religious discourse for the clergy to talk about it, but somebody has to, we as laymen have to practice it. So practice is more difficult than putting it on a PowerPoint. But I think our Eastern values are based on common sense. But when you look at common sense, again, I'm saying the cliches, common sense is not so common. It's a thought process that has to come within you. So you have to ask yourself, especially the younger generation, what is right? Not necessarily what is right for you. Now this is a very important point. What are these values? Now, one of the conflicts Sri Lanka has had with the West since the cessation of, or the conclusion of the hostilities in 2009, the Western world just cannot understand Sri Lanka. And we Sri Lankans cannot understand from a conflict resolution standpoint. That's for the simple reason that the Western world, we here are based on my rights. I have rights, individual rights, human rights. The Eastern world, we have also forgotten, unless you knew, and I'm sort of simply refreshing your memory, we have individual obligations to society. Society is far greater than the individual. That's the difference. So we have individual obligations to society. Sometimes, when I was a young person, those individual obligations to society was a difficult thing. I mean, you have to make sure you play by a certain norm, right? Your obligations to your parents, you still do. Individual rights are very different. Now, if you want to ask any questions at this stage, do interrupt me. But otherwise, at the end of the conversation, we can have a sorry, at the end of the presentation, we will have a discussion. Now, the Western side looks at individual rights. We are looking at how what we owe society. That's the important thing. I mean, there's I think, let's not go off the script about individual rights of children, etc. But remember, in a balanced society, and that's the important thing, we don't necessarily have a balanced society, either here or in Sri Lanka. Rights and obligations must coexist. And that is the challenge. The challenge is to understand what these individuals' rights are and our obligations to the society at large. And that's where the conflict is. Mutual coexistence. I'm not talking of races here, I'm talking of families here. Forget the rest of the bigger conflict or areas of issue. Here we're talking of your rights, or as a little, or a teenager's rights, he could see more rights, and you as parents could see more obligations. And there can be that sense of annoyance, despair of what did I do right, and what did I do wrong? Now, what happens is that those growing up and living in the West tend to forget their obligations. I think that's quite normal. The more grown up, more intelligent people will say being selfish, but we were teenagers and all that, they might conveniently forget their obligations. Now, we feel that by having a large gathering of friends, I'm now talking to the younger generation at school, at clubs, even here, or if you are working at work, who know their rights but not obligations. So I'm talking here at the office, at the school, we all have certain rights. So we are, in an unusual way, we are insulated with our rights, not our obligations. Especially young children, peer pressure, and to be part of a group. This is where sometimes parents would think that the children are going off the rails, because their allegiance is more towards their school friends and what they do, and perhaps imitate, not necessarily imitate, but follow peer pressure and being part of that group. Fortunately,